So yeah, largely this chapter focused on the final farewells and just calling a wrap on Wano, which right out of the gate, I do like how Oda brought this arc to a close in a very full circle kind of way, and in the very same way of how it started with the actual play, it's basically closing out in the exact same way, except adding onto that, we have an actual narrator who's closing up the story through the tale he's telling to Wano of the raid on Nogashima. And I do love the parallel of how Odin had created his own legacy through his death, of Odin being made to boil. In that same vein, they basically turned Orochi's legacy of how the Kurozumi was made to burn. Like, it's just so perfect because Orochi had just done so much in order to burn his legacy to the ground. In the name of revenge, like, he was just so consumed by it that inevitably he ended up burning his own legacy down. And yeah, obviously from there, we do need to talk about the farewell between Momo and the Straw Hats, as it's just so in character that Momo would get that overly emotional about them leaving, but even more importantly, Luffy low-key just claimed Wano as his territory by giving Momo a copy of the Straw Hats flag, which we all knew was coming, but in Luffy's typical way, I love how casual he treated the whole thing. Like, probably not even, like in Luffy's typical way, he probably doesn't even fully realize the kind of attention he's drawing to himself by making Wano his territory now. But again, knowing Luffy, he probably doesn't give a shit, and I like how Kid is so salty about not being named one of the new Yonko that he felt he needed to get one last jab in about them taking the easy way out. Like, again, Kid, get over it, would ya? But I guess to be fair, if Buggy was favored as a Yonko over me, I'd be a little pissed too. Like, again, seriously, I'm not gonna draw on it, but Oda, we need details. We need so many details here. Like, yeah. It was a very, and this chapter honestly in a lot of ways just felt very cathartic. Like, despite any issues I've had with Wano, it is still a very good arc, and just seeing it end like this just feels just nice and just like perfect. It almost feels perfect. Despite the ups and downs of the arc itself, this feels just like the perfect way to end the arc. Now, with this being the final chapter that closes out Wano, I thought I'd give my overall impressions of the arc, which is that, for me personally, this is an arc I overall have enjoyed a lot. But with that being said, I feel it is within the smaller narrative and pacing decisions Oda made throughout, where it does kind of drop a couple points for me, whether it has to do with how certain fights were structured, having certain antagonists like Jack or Orochi honestly come back one too many times for my liking, and just little decisions like that really kind of drag the arc down from being truly amazing. But the arc is still like a solid 8 out of 10 for me. And honestly, even a lot of the issues I do have with the manga, the anime is already been making strides to actually kind of fix. And yes, I know that, and yes, I say that knowing full well the irony of that statement, considering the anime's pacing is usually worse than the manga. But this is honestly kind of one of those weird cases where I appreciate the slower pacing of the anime a little bit more in terms of this arc, just for the fact that it feels like the anime is fleshing out fleshing out certain things more than the manga, and maybe I need to revisit this arc in the future sometime, somewhere down the line, but the anime is even making the Orochi and Jack issue more tolerable for some reason. I don't know what it is, but it just feels like it's not as unbearable like to see them come back again and again compared to the manga. I don't know why. Like, again, maybe it was just kind of the week to week thing that made it unbearable, and I need to revisit this arc again. But yeah, as a whole, I really did enjoy this arc. It's just in maybe the few minor narrative quibbles that I think I think it does kind of drag it down a bit, but even then, the arc isn't terrible, frankly. And yeah, obviously one of the other things is Yamato does stay behind in Wano, which in retrospect, despite my annoyances and quibbles about the possibilities of her joining the crew or not joining the crew, I really should have known right from the jump that this would be where her character would end up, simply because for as much of a connection as she has to Ace and by proxy Luffy, she has a greater connection to Wano and just the idea of wanting to uphold Oden's legacy. So just from that alone, I should have known from the start this is where she'd end up, and there was no way she'd end up joining the Straw Hats. Of course, the other thing that tipped me off was that in the Uta filler episodes of the anime I covered, she wasn't anywhere to be seen among the crew in just the beginning portion of the first episode of that mini arc. So that in itself was also a big tip off, but it does also make me wonder if at any point Oda intended for her to be part of the crew, but backed out on it because there was enough build-up support. Because there was enough build-up with Yamato as a character to kind of support both decisions, that she could have joined the crew or she could have just stayed on Wano. And ultimately, I am glad Oda did make the decision for her to stay on Wano, because I feel her, again, she does have more importance there than I think joining the crew. And ultimately, the way this chapter capped off, Wano also felt like it gave the perfect resolution for everyone and everything after so many decades of endurance from basically Kaido and Orochi's rule over Wano. It just felt like the perfect feel-good way to end this arc. And again, going back to the play, Hiyori coming out from behind the curtain and saying Kurozumi was made to burn, again, just felt so perfect, and the best way to cap off the Kurozumi's legacy of Wano's history, on top of just being a great final fuck you moment from Orochi beyond the grave. I really got a cackle. I'm not gonna lie, I really got a cackle out of that. I was like, fuck you, Orochi! I was like, yeah, fuck you, Orochi! Yeah, it was just all great. But, yeah, guys, that's pretty much all I got for this review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe, follow me on Twitter, and on Crunchyroll. Be sure to hit the notification bell, hit the subscribe button, and just share the video around, guys. Dark Knight of me, signing off. Later, everyone.